Sisters and brothers, siblings in Christ, grace and peace to you from the God of our Lord Jesus Christ. Today is the fourth Sunday and our final Sunday in our series on our new mission statement, Living Christ, inviting, challenging, growing in grace. You may recall that mission statements are meant to help and guide us so that when we come together, we know what our purpose is. Because there are many good things that we can and actually do, being able to say, hey, that's a really good idea, but it's not really who we are or what we are about. That can save us from all sorts of distractions and burnout, so that way then we can focus our energies where we are really about, and then can do the best that we can at them. At the same time, mission statements also help us understand why we do what we do, because they remind us of what our values are. In other words, we don't just simply say invite, challenge, and grow because they sound like nice verbs. It's true, but we invite because we value actively, intentionally moving toward all people, especially the marginalized. We value creating a sense of belonging, safety, and love, and creating authentic relationships through which all may experience God's loving presence. We invite because we value humility, a recognition that we need others, partners, to fulfill our mission. We challenge because we value our ability to question, to wrestle with our brokenness and with our doubts. We value the ability to move beyond our comfort zone and not be content with the status quo of our relationships. We value the freedom to be vulnerable because that opens wide the door for grace to enter into our lives and bring about change and adaptation. We challenge because we are dying for new life. And we grow because we value growing relationally, in community, because we are part of God's people. We value growing spiritually because God has first loved us so that we may then be free to love others and ourselves. And we value growing numerically because making disciples, well, that's part of our mission. And we value growing in opportunity to foster forgiveness, reconciliation, and grace because, well, we know that we've messed up in our lives and we know that we need grace to keep growing. To put it another way, we invite, challenge, and grow because we value Jesus Christ and the way of life that he showed us, that he first lived, that epitomized inviting, challenging, and growing, so that we may become more fully human, people made in the image of God. Now, this process of being made more fully human happens, say that 10 times fast. Not because we tried harder or because we got our act together first, but it comes to us by grace, by a gift from God and his unconditional love and forgiveness that changes hearts and minds and leads us to faith, to a response of love and trust of who God is and what God is up to in human history. And believing in or trusting in this process we call discipleship. Originally, the redevelopment team, after much prayer, conversation, and getting input from all of you, we crafted this mission statement as Living Christ, inviting, challenging, growing in grace. And this is how the congregation adopted it back at the end of March, knowing that it was still a living document. It was still a work in progress, and therefore could change. And as I lived with this statement for a while, I realized that as I thought about it, there was an important word that we left out. A word that this congregation knew even before I even got here was an important part of the redevelopment process, discipleship. And as such, for a while, I added a couple of words to our mission statement on that initial opening screen slide. So it said, Living Christ, inviting, challenging, growing in grace and discipleship. Either nobody noticed, or everybody who did notice didn't think anything of it and didn't bother to tell me. But I brought it up to the redevelopment team, and it was agreed that and discipleship sounded kind of tacked on. And it needed to be a little bit more integral to our mission statement. Fortunately, a quick solution was found, and it became Living Christ, inviting, challenging, growing in grace-filled discipleship. Ultimately, the congregation will get to vote on, debate, and decide whether or not to adopt this amended mission statement at our October 6th congregational meeting, when we will also decide whether or not we want to continue on official redevelopment with the synod or not. But regardless of whether we adopt the amendment or not, whether we sign up for another 3 more years of redevelopment, official redevelopment, or not, we will continue in the path of redevelopment. Jesus' parable today about the dishonest steward, however, begs an important question of us and all who would be disciples of Jesus. How urgently will we pursue this mission? Jesus tells the story of a steward who was slandered by unknown people, such that he was ultimately going to be fired by his boss. Facing this crisis, the steward urgently has to find a way to make a living. But rather than panic and give in to his anxieties and fears, he stops to think. The steward assesses his strengths and his weaknesses. He doesn't have the strength to do heavy labor like ditch digging. But he also assesses what his values are. He believes in himself enough that says, I cannot go about begging. That just isn't me. But then with that knowledge in mind, with that clarity, he then acts shrewdly, wisely. While the gospel reading may seem to be about money, Jesus is actually instructing the disciples about urgency, priorities, and acting wisely. Because, you see, Jesus is about to die. And everything that the disciples know and have gotten used to is about to change drastically. The disciples are going to have to adapt, and in the process, they will need to decide. Will they go back to their old lives of fishing and collecting taxes? Or will they continue in the life that Jesus has laid out for them? Because the truth is, they can't choose both. They will either have to choose one or the other. Sisters and brothers, we know this is true, that the world is changing around us rapidly. I've heard it described as all human cultures are being collectively hit by this massive cultural tsunami, including the church. Some churches or denominations have been hit sooner than others, and the urgency of adapting is front and center. The disciples and the early church adapted by going and sharing the good news of Jesus' resurrection because they believed that Jesus was coming back any day now, and people needed to be ready for that new way of living that would come with Jesus' return. After 40 to 50 years of waiting and preparing, and there being no sign of Jesus, however, the church realized, maybe it got something a little bit wrong, and they had to adapt again. Within recent decades, or maybe this past century, conservative evangelical Christians embraced a sense of urgency. They knew that people who died without faith in Jesus were going to hell. But evangelicals decided that they couldn't let that happen, not when there was something that they thought they could do about it. As this cultural tsunami begins to hit evangelical churches as well, they are going to discover that people are no longer going to be swayed by their fear of hell, especially by those who are amongst the fastest growing segment of the U.S. population, the nuns. Not N-U-N-S, N-O-N-E-S. These are people who believe that there is a God or a higher power, but have no religious affiliation. Sometime earlier this decade, a group of evangelicals, seeing that this wave, the tsunami was coming, began investigating various churches and theologies to see which ones were best situated to meet this growing number of nuns. And surprisingly, the evangelicals didn't conclude it was their theology. It was the theology of, wait for it, Lutherans, that had the best theology to reach the nuns because of our clarity and the depth of our understanding of God's grace, except that they concluded that we would probably never do anything with it because we lacked a sense of urgency. Like the wise steward, we here have taken time to assess our strengths, weaknesses, and our values. We have laid out a path going forward in our mission statement with progressive values that dovetail, I might add, very nicely with those with the perspectives of the nuns, as evidenced by several nuns now amongst us that are former nuns. No tongue twisters or puns intended there. But the question still remains. In our next years of redevelopment, will we embrace and pursue our mission from Jesus with urgency, or will we be swept away by the tsunami? That is our question.